The glass walls of the Deshmukh Furniture Corporation sparkled under the Mumbai sun, sleek, modern, a testament to legacy. Inside, though, the atmosphere was anything but bright. Tension clung to the walls like damp air before a storm. Amara Deshmukh stood at the head of the boardroom table, hands shaking slightly as she adjusted the projector remote. Her voice, though calm, carried a subtle desperation. So if we pivot to digital supply chain tracking, we can save nearly 17% annually on losses due to late shipments. I've run the numbers twice. Silence. Except for the gentle tapping of Neha's manicured nails against her designer phone. Her father, Raghav Deshmukh, adjusted his spectacles and stared at the presentation, not at her. Amara, these numbers look good, but the last 3 months have been chaos. Orders delayed, clients leaving, vendors complaining, and now a lawsuit from Jain & Sons. Amara stiffened. That lawsuit isn't valid. The shipment delay wasn't on us. It was a vendor miscommunication. I have the emails to prove it. Neha scoffed, finally looking up. Her expression was that familiar blend of pity and disgust. Emails won't fix our reputation, Amara. You changed the system. You introduced those new CRM tools, new partners, digital payments. You made all of this messy. I was trying to modernize a crumbling back end. Amara snapped before catching herself. Her voice softened. Look, I get it. Change is uncomfortable. But the old system wasn't sustainable. I tried to save it. Neha cut in, rising from her seat, voice icy. You buried it. Our father trusted you. Gave you control of operations, even when you had zero client experience. And look where we are now. The jab hit like a slap. Raghav stood, his shoulders slumped, face heavy with disappointment. Nof. No more arguments. I've made a decision. Amara's heart pounded. She looked at him, eyes pleading. Dad, I should have listened earlier. You're no longer part of the company. The words sliced through her like broken glass. Her knees buckled slightly, but she stayed upright. Wait, you're firing me, she whispered. You need to take responsibility, he said quietly. It's best for everyone. As she turned to Neha, you're okay with this? Neha shrugged, cold and composed. It's not personal, it's business. Maybe you'll learn something from this. Her mind reeled. The company she'd devoted years to. Her family's legacy, the only thing that connected her to her late mother, it was all being ripped from her hands. No trial, no explanation, just exile. Later that night, Amara sat on the edge of her childhood bed, now stripped bare, save for an old photo of her mother on the nightstand. Her suitcase lay open, clothes half-packed, heart shattered. Her father hadn't spoken a word to her after the meeting. Neha had smirked as she passed by the door. A single text buzzed on her phone, from her cousin Arav. Heard what happened. I'm sorry. I know it wasn't your fault. If you need anything, I'm here. Tears spilled silently. Someone believed her. She stood up, walking to the office one last time. Her access card still worked. For now, she entered her cabin and retrieved a worn leather folder, her notes, system reports, vendor contracts. Evidence no one had cared to look at. Her eyes landed on a file labeled, Client Incident Jain & Sons. Inside were emails, her approvals, vendor correspondences, and something strange, an unsigned delivery confirmation marked as delivered, 2 days before the actual ship date. Odd, but her brain was too exhausted to follow the thread. Instead, she placed the file back. What did it matter? No one cared. She was the scapegoat. The last words. The next morning, she stood at the threshold, one last time. Her father finally emerged from his study. He looked at her with the same blankness he wore during board meetings. Not the man who once taught her how to carve wood in the backyard, or who called her his little CEO when she was 10. I hope someday you understand, he said. You brought this on yourself. Her voice barely came out. I tried to fix it. I tried to help. Then maybe your help was the problem. The driver honked outside. She didn't say goodbye. She walked out with nothing but a suitcase, a few files, and a heart full of questions. What they didn't know, as her cab pulled away from the Deshmukh mansion, Amara looked back only once. In the distance, she could see Neha standing at the balcony, sipping coffee, smiling. That smile stayed with her. It burned in her memory, a cruel tattoo carved by betrayal. And though she didn't know it then, in time, that smile would become her reason to dig deeper, to return, and to make them regret every lie they built on her name. The city air in Pune was gentler than Mumbai's, less suffocating, more forgiving. For Amara Deshmukh, That difference mattered more than most people could understand. Here, she had stitched together a new life, thread by thread. Her apartment was small but bright, filled with books, soft plants, and the faint aroma of lemongrass. A far cry from the sterile perfection of the Deschmuck estate, it was hers. Her mornings began with tea and silence, followed by long hours of freelance digital consulting, something she'd learned out of necessity, then grown to love. Building things from scratch felt right. It mirrored her own journey. But there were still nights when the past haunted her, moments when her father's voice echoed in her dreams. "You brought this on yourself." She'd wake up breathless, gripping the pillow, as if holding on could stop her from falling all over again. New roots, old shadows, it hadn't been easy. The first year away from her family had been a mess of freelance gigs, rejected proposals, and therapy sessions she could barely afford. But Amara learned. She learned to speak to herself gently, to stop apologizing for simply existing. She discovered books that talked about emotional abuse without calling it that, and she found strength in the company of strangers who became her people. Her best friend now was a fiercely funny tattoo artist named Meghna, who'd once told her, "They didn't break you, Amara. They just handed you the hammer and dared you to do it yourself." And she had refused. A letter with her name. It happened on a Tuesday. Amara had just wrapped up a client Zoom call when she heard the knock. A uniformed courier handed her a thick envelope. From Office of Mukherjee and Rao, Estate and Trust Law Relaker Fen A134, Deschmuck Family Estate. Inheritance matter. Her heart stopped. She hadn't heard the name Deschmuck in months. She avoided it like a wound still healing under a bandage. The letter explained that her maternal grandfather, Dattatreya Shinde, had left her a storage locker in Worli. The contents were marked as personal and confidential. It had remained untouched for years, and under estate closure, the items now legally belonged to her. She remembered him only faintly. An old man with soft eyes and strong hands who taught her chess and gave her caramel toffees every Diwali. He'd died before she turned 16. Why would he leave her something? Curiosity bloomed like a spark. The locker, it smelled of dust, wood polish, and time. The storage facility manager handed her a key and stepped aside. Inside locker Fen A134 were 3 large boxes, an old office chair, and a rusted filing cabinet. She opened the first box. It was filled with handwritten ledgers, notebooks with her grandfather's looping Marathi handwriting, and a few USB drives wrapped in tissue like fragile relics. The second box contained contracts, letters, and older Deschmuck company records, far before her time. She didn't realize it yet, but she was standing in the eye of a long, buried storm. The discovery that night, surrounded by papers and files, Amara began scanning through the USB drives. One folder caught her attention. Internal transfers ND. Her heart quickened. Inside were PDF scans of invoices, dozens of them. Many were flagged with red annotations in her grandfather's handwriting. Duplicate payments, Shell vendor, ND & Co. Why was this routed outside Deschmuck accounts? Amara frowned. ND & Co. She opened a ledger entry and froze. ND & Co. stood for Neha Deschmuck & Co., a side brand her sister had started unofficially. Before the collapse, the documents showed repeated payments from the Deschmuck main accounts, routed into Neha's experimental furniture line for almost 14 months. Illegal, hidden, fraudulent, and worse, signed off by Raghav Deschmuck himself. She felt sick. Her name had been on the official operations sheets during those months. She had taken the fall for mismanaged funds. But here it was. Plain as sunlight, they had done it. And they'd let her burn for it. Memory as evidence. A flood of memories returned. The strange tension during board meetings, Neha's odd absences, the overcomplicated vendor reports, the unsigned delivery receipt she once found. She hadn't mismanaged anything. She'd been deliberately kept in the dark. Set up, even. Amara stared at the files, heart pounding. They blamed me. They shamed me. And all this time, they knew. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She smiled, not with joy, but with the grim satisfaction of truth cracking through silence. The spark. The next day, she digitized everything, filed and backed up every folder, sent encrypted copies to her email and a secure drive. Then she made a call. Reina, it's Amara. I know it's been a while. I need to talk. Do you still write investigative columns? Reina Sharma was a former classmate, turned investigative journalist for the Herald Times. She'd once covered a corporate whistleblower case that shook a pharmaceutical giant. Reina didn't hesitate. For you, Absolutely. Tell me everything. A fire in her chest, Amara no longer wanted revenge in the way people imagined, loud, cruel, explosive. She wanted truth. In daylight, in boardrooms, in press rooms. She wanted justice not just for herself, but for everyone they'd manipulated, lied to, stepped over. And for the little girl who once believed her father when he said, "You're going to change this family someday." He had no idea how right he was. The taxi rolled slowly past the Deshmukh corporate building, still tall, still proud, but now with a faded sign and half-lit floors. Amara sat in the back seat, sunglasses hiding her eyes. She hadn't seen this building in 3 years. The glass walls once made her feel proud. Now they looked like windows of a ship about to sink. She paid the driver and stepped out, dressed in a tailored black blazer and muted silver jewelry. Not flashy, not forgettable either. Just enough for them to remember she had returned. The setup, the plan was already in motion. Her meeting with Reina Sharma, the journalist, had gone better than she could have imagined. Reina had taken one look at the files Amara provided and said, "This isn't just corporate theft. This is a legacy scandal." They decided to wait. Time it perfectly. Amara didn't want the reveal to come from behind a computer screen. She wanted to be in the room when it happened. So she designed a bait. A Young Entrepreneurs of India summit, hosted by a prominent business group that Reina had connections with. A sleek, modern event celebrating innovation, integrity, and industry reinvention. Exactly the kind of place Neha Deshmukh would be desperate to attend. Amara reached out quietly, through her network, friends of friends, fake business profiles, anonymous contacts. A formal invite was sent to Neha under the name Deshmukh Legacy Furniture, promising exposure, press, and a keynote opportunity. Of course, Neha accepted. The brief reunion 2 days before the event, Amara visited the Deshmukh building. She wasn't expecting to see her father, but there he was, older, thinner, and grayer than she remembered, standing in the lobby speaking to a receptionist. When he saw her, his face dropped like a stone in water. "Amara," he said slowly, voice caught between guilt and disbelief. She gave him a smile. Not warm, not cold, just controlled. "Hello, Dad." He stared at her, unsure what to say. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally. "I was just visiting," she said lightly, then added, "I saw your latest financial reports. They're not great." His face hardened. "You wouldn't understand. It's complicated." "I'm sure it is," she said with a smile that said, "I understand more than you think." He looked like he wanted to say something else, but she didn't wait. She turned and walked away. 3 years of pain in every step, and not a trace of it showing on her face. The event, the ballroom, was dazzling. Chandeliers, LED walls, influencers, press booths, cameras clicked. People mingled with champagne flutes and polished grins. Amara stood backstage, headset in place, working with Reina and the AV team. On the screen behind her was the final slide she'd personally prepared. In the main hall, Neha was in her element, posing, laughing, giving interviews. She wore an emerald green saree and a fake humility Amara knew too well. Midway through the event, Neha was called on stage for her keynote titled, "Legacy with Innovation, Building the Future from the Past." Amara almost laughed. Neha spoke confidently, name-dropping brands, talking about resilience, about bouncing back, after setbacks, about the value of family and business. "No matter how tough things get, I believe family is your greatest investment." Amara's cue. She stepped onto the side stage. The audience didn't notice her yet. On the screen behind Neha, the presentation shifted. Suddenly, her slides disappeared, replaced by folders, real ones. Internal transfers and Vendor accounts, approval signatures, Jane code setups. The room went quiet. "Sorry for the interruption," Amara said smoothly as she stepped forward. "There's just something missing from this story." All heads turned. Gasps rippled through the room. Neha froze. Reina was already recording. The media crew turned their cameras. Amara's voice was calm but electric. "This isn't about revenge. This is about truth. For 3 years I was called the failure, the one who ruined a legacy. But here's what really happened." She clicked the remote. Emails, invoices, transfers. A scanned signature from Neha on one side, her father's initials approving it on the other. Real, time-stamped. The final slide. A video. Her grandfather's old voice recording from a personal note he had made on his deathbed, labeling the transactions fraudulent and warning Amara to someday protect the family's name from its own rot. Silence. Then murmurs. Then outrage. Aftermath. Neha tried to speak. This is fake. It's taken out of context. Amara didn't argue. She didn't need to. Lawyers stepped in. Emails began pouring in. Clients, investors, auditors. The next morning, headlines ready. Deshmukh scandal, sister clears name. Uncovers fraud by family head and CEO. Legacy shattered. Truth behind Deshmukh Furniture's collapse revealed. Daughter framed for embezzlement returns with proof. Neha's sponsors pulled out. Her image was shattered. The Deshmukh empire lost all remaining credibility. But Amara didn't stay. She didn't gloat. Didn't post a video. Didn't go on talk shows. She disappeared. 2 weeks later, a small company registered under her name launched quietly. Avarna Interiors. Clean, honest. Design-forward furniture with ethical sourcing. No drama, no legacy, just freedom. Regov's call 1 month later, her phone buzzed with a number she hadn't saved. But would never forget. She didn't answer. He left a voicemail. Amara, I don't know where to begin. I was wrong. I should have protected you. I thought I was doing the right thing. Please, if you ever. She deleted the message. Some apologies come too late. Final scene, Amara sat on her Pune balcony, watching the sun set. Meghna was inside, painting. A kettle whistled on the stove. She sipped her tea quiet. Not victorious, not bitter. Just done. Finished with the past. She looked down at her phone and typed a final journal entry. Mumbai was still reeling. The Deshmukh name, once whispered in business circles with admiration and envy, had become the center of a financial scandal so deeply layered, it was now the subject of a streaming documentary pitch. Headlines hadn't stopped. Former CEO under investigation for corporate fraud and asset manipulation. Deshmukh scandal. Sister speaks out after years of silence. From scapegoat to savior, the woman who exposed her own family. Neha had gone silent on social media. Their father, Raghav Deshmukh, had stepped down temporarily, pending investigation. The board was pressing charges. Former clients were now coming forward with their own allegations of shady dealings from the final 2 years before the company's collapse. The empire had fallen, and Amara, she wasn't there to watch it burn. Peace, not power. In a quiet neighborhood in Pune, Amara sat under a banyan tree in a co-working garden space, sipping coconut water and finalizing her next brand campaign. Avarna Interiors had launched quietly, but its message had thundered minimalism, ethics, and transparency, everything her family's empire had pretended to be, but never truly was. Orders were already coming in. A Mumbai-based startup wanted her to design a sustainable office. A European interior magazine had asked for an interview. Her reputation was no longer stained. It sparkled with authenticity and strength. Still, she kept things small, grounded. She didn't want to be feared. She wanted to be free. Neha's fall back in Mumbai. Neha sat alone in the condo she once bragged about. Her brand ND&Co was shut down. Vendors were suing her. Her lifestyle influencers dropped her brand overnight. Her Instagram went dark. But worse than the public humiliation was the silence from her father. Even he hadn't called her since the board turned on him. She had built her name on mirrors and smoke. And Amara had torn through it with the sharp edge of truth. For the first time in her life, Neha was forced to see herself without an audience. And she didn't like what she saw. The apology that never came. Amara never expected Neha to call. And she didn't. Not to apologize, not to explain, not even to ask, why? And that, somehow, hurt more than if she had screamed. But Amara didn't need an apology anymore. She had learned that closure doesn't always come wrapped in guilt or forgiveness. Sometimes, it comes when you build something so powerful. The people who tried to break you have no choice but to watch in silence. Raghav's regret. Her father did try. He called again. This time it wasn't to defend. It was to confess. I knew Neha was misusing the funds. But I thought if I protected her, I could control it. I didn't realize she'd drag the whole name down. I just couldn't lose both of you. So I let you take the fall. You were the stronger one. I thought you'd survive it. There was a long silence on the line. Then Amara said, gently, you were right about one thing. I did survive it. The click. A letter from the past. Weeks later, Amara received an envelope in the mail. No return address. But inside, a folded letter in handwriting she hadn't seen since she was a child. It was from her mother. Her grandfather had apparently kept it safe all these years, dated 2 months before her mother's death. My darling Amara, you will grow up in a family full of noise, status, expectations, image. But don't forget who you are when it's quiet. You are not their name. You are your own legacy. Love boldly. Speak gently. Rise alone if you must. You are not their failure. You are my masterpiece. She cried that night, not out of sadness, but because for the first time, she truly believed it. The final closure a few months later, Amara visited the old Deshmukh estate. Not as a daughter seeking forgiveness, but as a businesswoman meeting the new board that had replaced her father. The receptionist looked up. Name, please. She smiled. Amara Deshmukh. There was a pause. A slight shift in tone. She was no longer forgotten. She was now remembered. What they lost, Neha lost the illusion of perfection, and the world she built on stolen ambition. Raghav lost the daughter who would have saved him, had he only believed her. The Deshmukh name lost its luster, now synonymous with pride that refused to listen. What she gained: peace, purpose, her name, washed clean and glowing. A legacy she didn't inherit but created. She hadn't taken revenge to hurt them. She had taken it to heal herself, and healing, she realized, was the most graceful revenge of all. Final scene: Amara stood by a lake, her dog running ahead, leaves crunching underfoot. Meghna laughed in the distance, holding 2 coffees. Her phone buzzed. Email subject: Avarna Interiors, shortlisted for Emerging Ethical Brand of the Year. She smiled, then looked up at the sky and whispered, like a promise only she could hear, "You blamed me for ruining everything. But all I ruined was your illusion of control." She walked forward.